Psalm chapter 130. First thing to do when you find yourself in a hole is stop digging. It's the last thing we usually do, but it's the first thing we should do. Psalm 130, from the depths of despair, O Lord, I call for your help. Hear my cry, O Lord. Pay attention to my prayer. Lord, if you kept a record of our sins, who, Lord, could ever survive? But you offer forgiveness that we might learn to fear you. I'm counting on the Lord. Yes, I am counting on him. I have put my hope in his word. I long for the Lord more than centuries long for the dawn. Yes, more than centuries long for the dawn. O Israel, hope in the Lord. For with the Lord there is unfailing love. His redemption overflows. He himself will redeem Israel from every kind of sin. Stop digging. Stop digging. Very, very wise advice, because we all dig ourselves into a hole on occasion, right? Some more than others. Raise your hand. Those who are some more than others. A lot of hole diggers out there. Yeah. Well, a mom came down into the kitchen one morning only to find that the chocolate birthday cake she made the night before was half eaten. Dun, dun, dun. Suspecting the culprit, she called her daughter down from her bedroom. Did you eat the cake? No, the daughter said. Shoveling, digging a hole, right? Well, then who did? Asked the mother. It was the dog. Digging a little bit deeper right there. The dog can't get up on the counter, the mother pointed out. He's small. So the girl said, Brian fed the dog. Brian was her brother. Shoveling a little bit deeper, and the mother comes back and says, Brian slept at a friend's house last night. Did you eat the cake? The mom wanted her daughter to admit what she did, but the daughter just insisted upon digging herself deeper and deeper into the hole. Did you eat the cake? The mother asked. Jesus ate the cake, said the daughter. Multiple shovels on that one. Just shoveling, the hole is getting deep. Jesus ate the cake. How did Jesus eat the cake? You told me that Jesus lives in me. And Jesus ate the cake through me. I'd say she's about 10 feet deep at that point. She just needed to stop digging. Just needed to stop digging. The hole got so big that there's no way she was going to get out of that hole at all. Which brings me to a very good top 10 list. I like top 10 lists. Sometimes I bring them out here. Top 10 ways to make the hole you're digging a little bit bigger. Okay, you ready for this? Top 10 ways to make the hole that you love to dig a little deeper. Okay, number 1. When someone points out that you are wrong, get visibly angry. Dig a little bit deeper, okay? Number 2, raise your voice. That'll get you deeper into that hole a little bit. Here you go. Have a stare down with the person that's pointing it out. Stare them down. Digging a little bit deeper. Here's one that we all like to do. Use statements like, you always, and point your finger when you do it. That'll get you way deep into your hole. And here's a great one that people love to do. Say to the other person who's angry and upset with you, say, calm down, okay? Who does that one? Calm down. Like that ever works. That makes it 10,000 times worse. Just don't do it. Here's one. Number 6. If you want to get deeper into your hole, make sure that you get the last word in. Make sure you get the last word in, and you'll never get out of that hole. Number 7. Correct every minor detail that the person that's upset is getting wrong. Correct them all. Number 8. Dig your heels in. Number 9. Do all the talking and don't listen at all to the other person. And number 10. The number 10 way to get yourself deeper into the hole is get sarcastic, okay? You'll never get out. You'll never get out. So what should we do when we're deep in a hole and our lives are spiraling out of control? The answer is so simple. First, and foremost, stop digging. Verse 1. From the depths of despair, O Lord, I call for your help. I think the writer of this psalm was writing from the bottom of some sort of abyss or some sort of hole that the writer found themselves in. It's like he was just about to lose hope of ever seeing the light of day. He realized he was way over his head in this hole, and he had no seeming hope of getting out. Just about to lose all hope. And most often, the holes that we find ourselves in this world are figurative holes. It's very rarely someone actually falls down a hole, right? Like you fall down a well, like you're out in the woods walking one day. What a horrible thought. Isn't that awful? But it's very rarely that we find ourselves actually physically in real holes, falling in real holes. It's figurative holes that we find ourselves in. But they're real nonetheless, and they're difficult nonetheless. And oftentimes, like that politician or that celebrity trying to weasel their way out of something that they did wrong, only to dig themselves in deeper and deeper, we, too, get caught up in that ludicrous idea that we can get ourselves out of this hole by meandering and weaving our way out, only to find that we are getting deeper and deeper into it. Unfortunately, most people only stop digging their holes in order to find a bigger shovel to dig with. And that becomes a problem. Page 6 of the Washington Post. The Washington Post, page 6, October 25th, 1911. 1911 on the Washington Post. It said this, "Nor would a wise man seeing that he was in a hole, go to work and blindly dig it deeper. Nor would a wise man, seeing that he is in a hole, go to work and blindly dig it deeper." And so the law of holes was established. The law of holes. You ready for this? There's a law of holes. Believe it or not, it has 4 parts, 4 laws of the law of holes. The first law of holes, ready? Which is what we have just discussed. When you find that you have unwittingly dug yourself into a hole, stop doing what you're doing, which is only making the situation worse. Please stop. And we have idioms for this first law of holes, right? Such as adding fuel to the fire, right? You know that expression. Or pouring gasoline on the fire. There's another version of it. Adding insult to, right? You know this, and so on and so forth. There's lots of little expressions that we have to show that we know we need to stop because we're down deep in this hole. That's the first law of holes. Is to stop digging. Number 2, the second law of holes. Don't dig a hole for others, like trying to trap them. Sometimes when we find ourselves in holes and we find ourselves in difficult situations, whatever they might be, ones that we've bumbled into or are times in our lives that are just downright hard, we sometimes, believe it or not, try to trap other people to distract away from our own situation. Proverbs 26:27 says this, "Whoever digs a pit will fall into it. If someone rolls a stone, it will roll back on them." Proverbs, certainly the wisdom of Proverbs written by Solomon, pointing out the obvious. If you try to trap someone in something, chances are you're only going to trap yourself because that kind of behavior doesn't work at all. Don't lay traps for your enemies. You're likely to fall into the hole that you dug. So don't dig a hole for yourself, and don't dig a hole for someone else to fall into, trying to catch them by baiting them. Just whatever it is, let it go. Which brings us to the third law of holes, which is really what you should do after you stop digging. Hopefully you do stop digging. It's really what you should do after you stop digging. You throw your shovel down, as the psalmist did, and again, verse 1, back to our text today, verse 1, "From the depths of despair, O Lord, I call for your help." Verse 2, "Hear my cry, O Lord. Pay attention to my prayer." Obviously, this paints a picture of a scene that a person is in some sort of a pit, which is figurative for sure, but nonetheless real. Escape is virtually impossible. He didn't fall in some kind of a hole or well or a cistern. He is in some sort of a fix, in some difficult situation in life. And yeah, it's some kind of a predicament or a pickle. And there's no doubt that he just cannot walk out unscathed from his scenario. He's in a fix at the bottom of a hole. Was it a hole that he was thrown in by somebody else? Did someone else bring him to this point in life? Or did he create this problem himself? I don't know. We don't really know. And truthfully, it doesn't really matter in our circumstance right here. But what does matter is what he does after he realizes where he is. He throws his shovel down and he looks up. He looks up out of the hole that he's in. He looks up to the daylight. You've got to look up to actually realize that you're in a hole. Otherwise, if you just keep digging yourself into that hole, you're not going to know how deep you are until you actually look up. And then shockingly and surprisingly, like, whoa, how did I get myself in this place right here? And more importantly, how do I get out? You've got to look up. You've got to take a breath when you're arguing with your spouse or your significant other. And you believe that you are so right because you believe that you're so right in this argument because you're not looking up at all. You're looking right down at that hole, digging it deeper. Or even worse, something has gone terribly wrong in your world and you don't want to fully acknowledge it. You've made mistakes or you've made bad choices and it's landed you in a pit of sorts. And if you don't look up, you don't truly realize where you are. Take advice from the psalmist today. From the bottom of the pit, he's now hollering for help. I call for your help. Hear my cry. Pay attention to my prayer. He's actually realizing that I cannot get myself out of this. I need help. I need help. The third law of holes, then, is to look up and cry for help. This might seem obvious. It might seem basic and obvious that, asking for help is what you should always do. But how many of us go through situations and never ask for help? You show up in church on Sunday. How you doing? Oh, I'm fine. Everything's good. Yeah. When you could be going through the worst. You could be going through the worst thing you've ever gone through in life, but you're going to put on that plastic face, and I'm not going to show my weakness to anybody. I'm not supposed to. You're supposed to be strong in this world, right? Here's a clue about strength. Strength is not rugged individualism. I'm sorry that phrase ever got used to describe Americans because it's not where true strength is. That's actually weakness when we try to do things alone. That's weakness. True strength comes from asking for help. And sometimes even crying for help. And it's, we start out asking for help from the person who can help us the most. And that is verse 1. Lord, I call for your help. We don't know the extent of this author's full duress, but we can be rest assured that it was considerable. It made its way into the Psalms, and he's talking about it in such desperate tones. You can be sure that it was something that was very, very difficult. Like this author has found himself in a place where it feels like he has lost everything. And I know that many of us have found ourselves in that place before. Like we feel like we have lost everything. Verse 2 is the verse for us. Hear my cry. Hear my prayer. This is the tone of a person who has lost everything. It has the sound of a parent who has suddenly lost a child to drug addiction. Doesn't it sound? That's that kind of desperation. It feels like the anguish of someone whose life and reputation have been destroyed and now feels there is nowhere to turn. It's a person at a crossroads. Have you ever been there? I have, and I know many of you have, if not all of us, at some point in our lives have been in a situation, maybe we still are. Many have found themselves standing alone at an intersection in the middle of nowhere in life and realizing the choices facing them have been reduced to just two choices. At least that's what we believe. This is what happens when we get to these places. We see there's just two choices. Either end it all now and forever, or cry out of the depths of our despair to God. And hopefully and prayerfully, those people in those places that find themselves there cry out to God, because that's what we need to do wherever we are. And there are holes in life that we find ourselves in that are not our own making at all. And I hope you've never been in such a deep, profound, dark place, but many people have. And this is where this writer is. And truthfully, it seems that this particular pit that this writer was in is probably one that he dug himself. I think we can get that from the text. Take a look at verse 3. Notice how he turns from crying to the Lord right to verse 3. If you kept the record, Lord, of our sins, who, O Lord, could ever survive? He's talking about wrongdoings right now. I'm thinking that this psalmist, who went right from crying out to the Lord to talking about the sins and God forgiving our sins, I'm thinking he did something very, very wrong or very, very bad, and he feels horribly bad about it. So here he is, and he did it himself, I think. In other words, this was my bad, my own doing, or rather my own undoing. He doesn't identify his mistakes to us in the text here. It's short, but if we were to take a candid inventory of our own choices, your own choices that you make, your own decisions, take a thought about your own behaviors and ill-chosen words that have landed us in hot water, we probably would not have too much difficulty determining areas in our lives where we have blown it. You know, if the pit we are in is of our own making, and we could admit that, we could admit, like this psalmist here, that we have blown it. And it was our fault, and take responsibility. Because that is a huge, important step. Then, and only then, are we open to the real solution. The only way to really and honestly get out of the hole that you dug, it's really truly to admit the wrongs that we've done and ask for forgiveness. You know, like, stop trying to get the last word in, please. Or trying to turn the table on the other person. It's you. It's us. It's the person in the mirror. That's the person that's responsible. That person did it. Eat it and own it. Verse 4 is so true. But you offer forgiveness that we might learn to fear you. And fear is not like, quaking in our boots at God, thinking he's going to, lightning bolt us at any moment in time. Fear is more of a deep, deep respect. This is the Almighty God, after all. And while we are all imperfect and cannot expect ourselves to be perfect and flawless, we do need to have a humbleness before God. And fear and humbleness they should be interchangeable in this text that we're looking at today. So the third law of holes is to look up and ask for help. And this leads us to the fourth law of holes. Verse 5. I am counting on the Lord. Yes, I am counting on him. I have put my hope in his word. Verse 6. I long for the Lord more than centuries long for the dawn. Yes, more than centuries long for the dawn. Having stopped the digging and having sent up a cry for help, one must wait with hope. Wait. That's a word that I hate. Wait. Anybody else hate the word wait? I don't like waiting. I was watching the news the other day. It was just the other day. I think it was like Friday I was watching the news before I was writing my sermon. Five kids down in Staten Island. Did you see this on the news? They got stuck in a sewer system. Oh, I mean, talk about a nightmare. They entered a storm sewage system through a hole. It was a hole. They bent the screen back or whatever, the preventative fencing back, and they entered through a tunnel with a 40-inch opening on it. I don't know why kids do these things. I don't know why, but it just makes my skin crawl just thinking about it. 5 kids lost in Staten Island sewer system. That's gross. But anyway, after they became disoriented, here it is. After they realized where they were and the trouble that they were in, they stopped and they called emergency responders for help. Amazingly, their cell phones worked from where they were. Amazingly. And they're on the phone. We're stuck in the sewers, one of the boys told the 911 operator. A dispatcher that was familiar with the area helped pinpoint the opening right where the boys entered by having them describe the area where they entered in. So the dispatcher that was familiar with it was able to understand that. And when rescue workers went there, their jackets and their school bags were at the opening where they went in. So confirmation of where they started at least. But the firefighters had to enter into this tight space with a rope. Having to crawl at points in search for these children down in there. They called out to them and they could hear them in the distance. But where are they in this pit? Where are they? They had a hard time pinpointing where they were, and they were opening, drains and catch basins and sewer lids, trying to figure out where they are. And then the last drain they opened is when they could hear them clearly, and they all said that they were okay. And so the firefighter went down and saw them about 40 feet down the tube right at that point, and then assisted the children out of the tube and up and out. The boys had traveled 1,500 feet into the sewage system. After being stuck for an hour, they emerged with only a minor knee injury. Why did they emerge so well? Because they followed the rule of holes. They followed the rule of holes. They stopped. They stopped what they were doing. They could have tried to find their own way out and got themselves so lost and injured in there, and they could have never come out. They realized this isn't working. They looked up, tried to at least. They cried for help. And what do? They waited. There's that wait word again. They waited for help to arrive. They didn't try to do it on their own, which they could have tried to. Sometimes we have no choice but to stop and cry out and wait for help. And that could be a difficult thing. I was also reading a story. This is a crazy story. Back in 1973, August 29, 1973, there was a small Canadian deep-sea submersible. Maybe some of you might remember the story. Pisces 3, it was called. It was a Canadian deep-sea submersible. Like those tiny little subs they send down for scientific reasons. Yeah, people get in those. No way would I ever do that. No way would I ever do that. So they sank this. They put this sub in the Irish Sea, and unfortunately, this deep sea submersible sank to the very floor of the Irish Sea, 1,600 feet down. 2 men were inside: British Royal Navy officer Roger Mallinson and an engineer, Roger Chapman. And actually what happened was a rear hatch malfunctioned on this little sub, and it accidentally opened and seawater rushed into one of the compartments. And basically it caused the sub to plummet down to the bottom of the sea like a rock. It took more than 3 days to rescue these people. It was 1973, maybe not as able back then as we are now. 3 days, and when they were finally reached, when they were finally pulled out of that sub, they had 12 minutes of oxygen left. Imagine that. They've been trapped in the crushing depths for about 84 hours. Imagine having to wait, and that's why we don't like waiting. Waiting feels terrible to us. Verse 6, I long for the Lord more than centuries long for the dawn. More than centuries long, like soldiers who are on guard all night long at their shift, waiting for something bad to happen. And then when the dawn finally rises, that threat of ambush disappears, and it's just an encouraging, overwhelmingly secure feeling. But the wait is so hard to do. And the longing for the dawn is so strong, like these people in that submersible waiting all that time. Can't you just pull us out? I've asked God that many times in my life. Can't you just pull me out, God? Can't you just pull me out? Why do I have to wait? But the important thing is that we are there and we are looking up and we're waiting on God as we ask him for help. It's incredibly hard to wait. But if one cannot wait, then one cannot hope. For one is tied to the other. If we're going to hope, then we have to wait. Because hoping is waiting on God, not trying to do it ourselves. What does that do? Trying to get out ourselves, what does that do? Deeper, deeper down. Verse 7. O Israel, hope in the Lord. For with the Lord there is unfailing love, for his redemption overflows. He himself will redeem Israel from every kind of sin. So how do we do it? We wait by staying in the now. We wait by being in that place where we're in. Getting over past problems and relieving old mistakes, or getting a case of the shoulda, coulda, wouldas. Anybody do the shoulda, coulda, wouldas? Shoulda, coulda, woulda done that. It's no help whatsoever. Focus on the task at hand, the next steps, and positive actions. And in a hole, there is no other way to escape than up. When you reach out to God, you've got to let God answer you. You got to let him do his thing. You reach out to the creator of the universe. We got to let God be God in our lives. And stop trying to take over his role and tell him what he should do with our lives, as if we know. As if we can understand anything that we need, really. God's the creator of the universe. He ought to know much more than we do. So we wait by staying in the now. We wait with courage. John Wayne, everybody knows John Wayne. He reportedly said this: courage is being scared to death, but saddling up anyway. Or as a rock climbing. I would never rock climb, by the way, because I hate heights. But a rock climbing analogy, every time I watch rock climbers, courage is being, scared to death, but strapping on a harness, snapping into a carabiner clip, and having faith that the rope won't break and the person belaying you will not let go. That is waiting. Courage. And we wait with contentment too. We don't wait as if, you're standing in front of the elevator door. It's like, open, come on, elevator, get down here, No one ever does that, I'm sure. Yeah. The elevator will come when it comes. And it's got to travel all that way down. God's going to do his work in God's way in your life. He's going to pull you out of the pit. But it's going to be in his way. And, there's lessons to be learned, for sure. And if he pulled us out of every pit immediately, who would learn anything? We'd be right back in another pit in 2 seconds flat, right? There's lessons to be learned in life. Corrie ten Boom once wrote, "There's no pit so deep that God's love is not deeper still." He's not going to lose us anywhere we are. Never will we be lost. God's forgiving love will reach down to the depths of our soul, even that pit we are in, that's inside. That dark pit that finds us inside of us. He's going to lift us up to a new place and a fresh start. And it's then that we realize that when we are forgiven, we indeed have a future. This is what the psalmist wanted, I think. It's what we all want. To be forgiven and to have a future. And that is by far the best way to get out of any hole that you find yourself in. Can you please stand?